Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a lightning fast review of the Sencut Praktisk. This is a very basic, straightforward knife that has an aesthetic that we've seen a million times over, but Sencut does a really good job. And at 40 bucks, this knife is going to make a lot of people happy, especially if you are new to the knife world, or if you're somebody who's just like not incredibly confident about where to start, right? Maybe you have collected pocket knives or used pocket knives for a long time, and you're learning that there are certain brands that sort of deliver that combination of utility and value over what you've been carrying, and you're just ready to move on into that territory. Sencut is a really good place to start. So whether this is for you or it's a gift for somebody else, I'm going to let you guys know I'm going to recommend this knife in general, but there's not really any surprises here. Thanks so much to Sencut for sending this in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Let's go ahead and measure it. We're going to go lightning fast today. Overall, how many times I said lightning already? 3 times. 8 1/8. So it's a full-size knife, blade length 3.5 inches, cutting edge about 3.45. Size comparisons. Any custom scales in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. It's a full-size knife, but really very much in between something like the 8010 and the 8020.5. Here it is up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3, much closer to the size of the PM2 with more cutting edge. And then finally up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How's the action? This knife does run on bearings. It's a liner lock. There's no double clutch, so you can do that one-handed disengagement. The flipper tab actually has the whole knife has a heavier, the detent is heavier than you might think. It's weirdly relating the detent to specific parts of the knife. So the flipper tab actually works really well, and so do the thumb studs. The part of this knife that's a little uncomfortable is the really toothy part of the liner lock. So if you like to sit and fidget, it's not really fun to disengage, but taking it out and, deploying it and using it, disengaging the lock and putting it away, it's unlikely you'll notice. It just depends on how often you do that. Overall, the action's exactly what you'd expect. It feels really good, and Civivi knows how to tune detent properly. Let's go ahead and do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's pretty much standard, maybe a little bit thicker because of the liners, the full liners with the scales on top. So a little bit, not bad though, not incredibly thick. That's not how I'd define it. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This is a compact full-size knife, and it carries pretty much like the most average pocket knife you could possibly imagine. I mean, this is going to be very familiar territory for most people. There's no surprises here in terms of the carry size or the folded up position, right? Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel. They will fall out of this thing, so just be aware of that. The pivot and the body screws are all going to be T8, which is right there if you can see it. Sorry. The pivot is going to be T8, and the body screws, like I said, they're all going to be T8, 2 on each side. And then we have 2 T6 screws for the pocket clips, so no surprises there. As long as you have the right tools for the job, should be good to go. Blade stock thickness is almost certainly about 110 to 115 thousandths here. Come on now. Yep, 115 thousandths, so definitely on the thinner side. And then weight for this guy. Go ahead and do that here real quick. What do we have it on currently? Is it set to? It's set to grams. We'll go ahead and do grams first. 111 grams or 3.9 ounces. So pretty much also average weight. 3.5 inch blade, 3.9 ounces of weight, with the balance being slightly back of the pivot, but still right in the middle of the primary index finger position. Meat and potatoes. This looks like what? A bajillion different knives. Very classic handle profile, incredibly classic blade profile. The reason we see this so often is because it works. Some companies have created this profile and it's been trash. Other companies have created this profile and it's been pretty good. This is on the above pretty good side. I mean, Sencut honestly does an exceptional job with just about everything they do. be aware of that detent. It really is heavier than you expect, but that's good. Once you adapt to it, you should be okay. I wish the thumb studs honestly were a little bit wider, considering how heavy the detent is and where they place them. But reverse flicking it is actually pretty comfortable. It's really just, in my opinion, it's the forward thumb flick or the standard thumb flick that's a little bit tricky, just because of the detent and the thumb stud placement. I think bigger thumb studs would have helped with that, but it's overall pretty darn good. Because of the classic handle profile, it's very, very comfortable. Outside of the fact that Civivi and Sencut insist on using this ridiculous Loch Ness monster clip, your clips should be shorter and they shouldn't have a bill. That would solve so many problems, and essentially no one would care except for the argument enthusiast in the comment section, right? Those 7 guys that will argue with anything. But realistically, this clip is fine. It will eventually catch on something and bend out, and it's also not creating a situation that is optimal for, ergonomic comfort, but it's fine. You can choke up a little bit. 1 knuckle, maybe. I'd be careful with that position. Otherwise, I'd stay behind the flipper tab. The thumb stud, for the most part, clears the cutting path, and maybe just a little bit in the cutting path, not bad. This is the type of knife that's essentially going to be an all-purpose for normal knife tasks. I'm not saying like digging the weeds out of the cracks in your driveway. That's obviously not a knife task, but some people still use their knives for that. I don't know how you cut things afterwards with your knife that's made for cutting, but if that's what you use your knife for and you're happy, then, hey, great. Rainbows and sunshine for you, pal. But yeah, this blade will be really, really good at standard cutting tasks. 9CR18 MOV is not going to win any awards in edge retention, but it's stainless, it's reasonably tough, and it's easy to touch up, which is what you want to see in a budget knife that's probably going to be abused from time to time, right? The tip is definitely very fine. So obviously poke things that are not as hard as the knife. Don't use it as a pry bar or a screwdriver, right? Regardless of what your grandpa or your Uncle Carl told you about how they use their knives. If they're using them as a screwdriver or a pry bar, they're using their knives wrong, so don't do that. But the Sencut logo on the front, I kind of wish that they would take a note from Civivi and not do that, because especially on their coated blades, this is basically paint, it really shows up and it looks like, it looks really stamped and pressed, right? But okay, not that big of a deal. It says 9CR18 MOV on the other side. This coating will go away very, very quickly. In fact, I can probably show you. Do I have an aluminum can here? Yeah. So obviously, like, cutting aluminum cans is not something that you would normally do with a pocket knife, but it also won't necessarily hurt it. But I'd venture to guess that if we do a few cuts real quick, sorry, I'm bumping the camera, through this aluminum can, it's going to put some marks on this knife that are not going to come off. This is not a DLC coating. The other day, I did a review, and I was sitting out in the garage, and it was a knife that, and it just doesn't look bad, but they're not going to wipe off, right? It was a knife that I had picked up from Civivi, and I was sitting in the garage, and there was a can, and I was just absent-mindedly, like, cutting into it. All of us do stuff like that. And I did the review and didn't really say anything, and there was a guy in the comments who was like, nice fake scratches on the knife. I'm sure you colored those in with a pencil to make it look like you used it. And I was like, what mentality do you have to be in where you think that someone is going to put a Civivi knife so high up on a pedestal that in order to give the impression that the knife is used but not actually damage your precious Civivi knife, you would color on the blade? How do people get into that mindset? How do people come to those conclusions? Some of you should never, ever seek a profession as a detective. That is not your line of work. You should never do it because your intuition is bad. That would be, that comment from that gentleman was a great example. Terrible intuition. Probably his skills are best emphasized in some other department. But yeah, a coating like this, it's not going to wear off immediately, but yeah, there are going to be scratches from use that are permanent because this is not a hard coating. It's not a DLC coating or anything like that. So obviously if you avoid cutting things like aluminum cans, then this will hold up a lot better. But just to let you know, that's the type of thing that you can expect to see. Also, cutting an aluminum can will not, even when you're, dealing with something like as simple as 9CR18 MOV, it also is not going to dull the blade and make it like not sharp. A lot of people don't know that, right? Or they think that like cutting into something like that is just going to immediately ruin the blade. Yeah, if you cut aluminum cans and only aluminum cans, sure. But something like that on a simple video like this, it's not going to do anything. The edge is still fine. And Civivi and Sencut typically do a pretty good job with not only their geometry, but their heat treat, especially on, well, almost exclusively on their lower quality steels. But anyways, jimping, functional, and in a good spot. Wish it continued out just a little tiny bit further, but it doesn't, so whatever. Really like the forest green micarta. I think that's a nice look, and we don't see that as often as we should. We have pocket clip mounting positions on both sides of the knife. Why they chose to do a hole, I have no idea. You guys could have just done a lanyard bar, and then we wouldn't have to look at this stupid thing, but okay, whatever. It's not really pushing the pocket clip out of what I would consider to be the optimized position. This in and out of the pocket is fine on the micarta. Again, I just wish that it didn't have such a pronounced bill, and I wish it wasn't quite as long, but you can't always get what you want. It's hard to complain at 40 bucks. A little bit of shouldering back here on the stop pin. No blade play, up, down. Actually, no, I'm wrong. There is actually a teeny tiny little bit of left and right blade play. On a Sencut, I don't worry about that too much because that usually means that the pivot just needs to be tightened. If you buy a Sencut and yours has a little bit of blade play, that's not a reason to send, yeah, that's exactly what it needed. It's not a reason to send it back. You should have the right tools for this. Tighten it if it keeps happening. What you want is 242 Loctite. And the age of this one, you can tell, I've had this for a long time, many, many years. One bottle of 242. It's called blue Loctite, even though it's in a red bottle. One teeny, tiny drop on the threads of your pivot screw, and then leave it alone for 24 to 36 hours. I mean, leave it completely and totally alone. It should keep that nice and centered, but no, I'm sorry, not centered, but nice and tight there. And by the way, the centering on this, I believe, is spot on. Can we actually see it? Yeah. But that's what you do there. So anyways, this is an incredibly basic, classic, modern, It's very typical modern pocket knife. There are a lot of things out there. In fact, many of the things out there that are like this come from Sencut's own line, and even Civivi's line. But if you're new to pocket knives, do I recommend this? Yeah, but recommending this means recommending like literally 100 other knives. It's fine. For 40 bucks, it's a good choice. If you pick this up, if you already bought it and you're watching this video for reaffirmation, you made a good choice. Congratulations. If you're considering this knife, yeah, you'll like this. Take a look through Sencut's lineup. I mean, use the link for this guy down in the description, and once you're at Blade HQ, go to the search bar and type in Sencut, because they've probably got something that's slightly more optimized for you, right? Maybe this is it, maybe not, but it's a good knife. And if you're considering buying this as a gift for someone, it will also work for that. That's pretty much it. It's going to go in my cheap knives I like playlist. Not anything to beat down doors over, but it's a good, inexpensive knife. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.